Okay, what we're going to do today, people, is we're going to set up an email account using an SMTP server, probably from your web host, and we're going to be configuring it specifically for cPanel because a lot of web hosts use cPanel in their backend for users to configure their domains and email and websites. And we'll add variations to secure email on other platforms, but the cPanel is probably the most common control panel for web hosts, so I'm going to start here. So what we need to do before you get started is you need to figure out which domain you're actually going to want to configure for this and send email from. You're going to want to know where you're configuring your DNS records. So sometimes you're going into the registrar, like something like a GoDaddy, domains.com, something like that, or the web host itself, like 1&1, Bluehost. I use InMotion, especially in this example, we're going to be using InMotion hosting. And a lot of these companies have cPanel instead of developing their own control panel for the web hosting. So let's get started by adding the domain first. So in this case, I'm going to be using this weird domain, crb.bz. And I'm going to add just the domain, just the email part. I don't want to have any web host or web page services or web hosting. I'm just going to use it for email hosting. So in this case, I have to create an MX record, and I'm going to set the priority and you'll have to find out what your particular server information is and then go to custom. And I'll build out one if I wanted to build out my own, like if I wanted to basically do a reference to my own domain. I'll show you how to do that as well. So the other reference would be create a CNAME, type mail as the host name, and then the value for this is the domain. We can add that. The timeout record doesn't really matter. The timeout length doesn't matter. And let's see, we'll just add that. And we can add another MX record. I want to make another MX record with a different priority. And then that one's going to be the domain name. And in GoDaddy's case, the @ symbol means the domain. In this case, the @ symbol means crb.bz. For the most part, you can leave this by default. I just prefer my timeout to go a lot slower. And I didn't like that, so I'm just reversing the order of this record. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is configure the domain name in the host. So in this case, we have this domain area. I want to create a new domain. And I'm going to do this just because, you have to do this when you create a new domain, whether or not you're going to use the web pages or just the web server, or the web server or the email server. You have to register the domain name with the server or with the host. And we just ignore all the web page part of it or the web page is part of it, or web server part of it, and we'll just configure everything for the email. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build this out step by step, and I'm going to do tests step by step because I want the test to fail in order so I can show everybody how to fix the problems. Because ultimately you're not going to get the configuration right the first time, and if I just throw everything in and it just works, there's going to be no way for you guys to troubleshoot or understand how to troubleshoot and add more configurations to the DNS record to actually get a good result on your spam tests. So in this case, what I just want to show you is that the domain is configured. It's ready to go on the web host. And for most of you, let's go back to GoDaddy for a second. For most of you, you're just going to do the name server change it to your web host, and configure everything in cPanel. In my case, I like to make DNS changes at the registrar level and split everything out. I have more control over the domain that way. At least I feel I do. So in this case, if you had changed the name servers in your registrar, like GoDaddy, domains.com, or some other registrar, you're going to just go to modify the zones, and you're going to change all the DNS settings there. I'm not going to do that because I'm not changing DNS from the web host. I'm changing DNS in the registrar, and I'm just going to add an email address at the web host level for the email server. Okay, so let me refresh this. I need to create. I have another thing there, so I'm just going to call this DKIM because that's the primary thing we want to configure. There's the DKIM, DMARC, and the SPF record. And after we create that, we're going to go and I'm just going to use the webmail. I'm not going to configure an email client. I'm just going to use the web interface just to make it a lot easier on myself. So I'm going to not check email. I'm going to go to, check email is the web browser or the web interface for the email client. Okay, so like I said, let's just go step by step and build out this thing as I fail and as I do the test. So I'm going to test with this particular account. I have everything in the description area for the reference to the companion document. Create a new email, type some message there. Send it off, and after you send it, you can go back to the test and do the check your score. And I'll let that run. It takes a little while sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow. And then once we get the results, we'll know what to fix. We'll So what happens is spam assassin thinks we're spammers because we don't have a DKIM signature, and then it describes that we don't have the SPF record, and it also describes that the more about the DKIM problem here. Okay. Now the reason why DKIM is so difficult is because some people think you could just generate a DKIM signature or an SSL certificate and use the public side, but the whole goal or the whole purpose of the DKIM certificate is to have the private key in the server, which is what these hosts kind of help with, is they host the private key and they give you access to the public key that you put in your DNS record. Okay, so what we're going to do is let's build out let's go to the low-hanging fruit first. Let's do the SPF record. So let's open this up, and we can see here that we want to just copy, because this is the easy way to do it. I mean, I can build out a whole string of text that most likely work, but I'm going to do this step by step, very slowly, and show you how you would fix these different errors. So what we do is we grab the SPF record that it recommends, and let's go into the GoDaddy, or the DNS. In your case, it might be the DNS record on the zone file of your host, or it's just going to be the DNS editing on your domain. So what we do for that is we add a text record. So the type is text. In this case, it's going to be for the domain itself. So it's, in the GoDaddy's case, it's just the @ symbol. In other people's case, it would be something like crb.bz, okay? But the GoDaddy reference to that exact same thing is the @ symbol. And then the string we were recommended to add from the test, okay? Just exactly this string of text. From the V all the way to the all. Change the timeout if you want. You don't have to. Okay, so we changed that. Problem with DNS changes, as probably you know, with anybody who has any experience with DNS. If you change anything, the standard wait time is like 24 hours, which is crazy. And most times it doesn't take anywhere near 24 hours. It takes on a light day, it takes anywhere from a few minutes to 15 minutes, and it can go up to hours. So let's just wait a little while, and then we'll run the check again, or the test again. Okay, it's probably been a couple minutes. I'm just going to make sure this went through or not. So all we need to do is go back to the main page, refresh the page so we generate a new address, a new email address for the tester, and then go into the email client and paste in the new address. Type in something, because if you don't type in some text, it'll generate a different error altogether, and it'll give you a low score just for not typing in text. So of course, once we send the email, then we put the button for checking the score. And again, this sometimes takes a little bit of time. Normally it takes less than 30 seconds. Sometimes it takes up to 5 minutes. I've run some tests, not on this particular platform with this tool, but some tests never work or they fail even after waiting 5 minutes. Okay, so we get a little bit less of a score, so let's see what's going on. Okay, now it wants a DMARC record, which is good. So we're just going through and step by step and fixing all the problems as they occur. So for the DMARC, we can just, again, go back to, oh wait, hold on, we're going back to GoDaddy for me. For you, it might be the cPanel zone, what's it called, zone file. And what you want to do in this case is type in _DMARC and then paste in the string that it gives you. So it gives you all this stuff. It gives you it won't give you the right DKIM, but it's going to give you the right DMARC, and it does come really close to giving you the right SPF record. Okay, and it's not giving me an SPF error anymore. It might again, but right now it's not. So we add the DMARC. Let's go into DKIM now. I'll show you how I configure that in cPanel. So in cPanel, what we want to do is go to email deliverability. It's just a tool on the cPanel, and just filter your list, do a search for the existing domain. I got to do a refresh. And then go to manage in the good domain you've decided to configure. It's going to load some settings here. Okay, so it basically generated your DKIM information here, okay? So you can just copy this. We're going to go to the DNS record and put this stuff in here. Forgot to add that, so it saves the record. Let's go into add a new text record. I'm going to paste that in, but we do not want the domain name. The domain name is not part of the name. The domain name is part of the value in some cases, not this case. So we just paste in the first part, which is considered the host name, which is default._domain key without the dot and without the domain. And the value of that is going to be the string of a long string of characters. It's not going to make any sense to you. It doesn't make any sense to me, but let's go where it is. Let's see. Here we go. So it's the value, DKIM1, semicolon, K, RSA, and then the long string of characters. So we just copy that and then go back to the DNS. Oh, yes, we didn't finish this. So let's paste this in. We can add, I think we can leave the semicolon, but in my experience, the semicolon doesn't usually exist. So I remove that semicolon at the very end and then change this value if you want. You don't have to change this value at all. Just add the record. And let's wait a couple more minutes for DNS to propagate, and then we'll run the test again. Now that we've installed or configured the DKIM, and it's been probably 3 minutes, let's run the test again. So all we need to do is just go back, refresh for a new address, copy the address, send a new message to the test. And after that gets sent, let's hit the check your score button and see what we get. So if we get errors this time, we're just going to continue configuring, making the changes as we need to until we get a good score. Okay, here we go. Yeah, SPF record here. Okay, good. So DKIM's good, which is the most difficult one and the most important. The SPF is not so difficult. You just need to get the right information here. Okay, so again, see, we added this one before, and it's giving us the updated SPF record. So let's change that and go back to the DNS. We'll go to the existing record that we already added, edit that, paste in the new value that was provided by the tool or by the tester, save it. And this one you can pretty much run right away. After you set a new record, you should be able to test it right away. So let's go back as it's saving. Let's go back, refresh the page to get a new address. Go to the email client and generate a new message. And hit the check your score button as soon as you send the message. All right, so we're still getting a pretty bad score. Let's see what it recommends to do now. Let me check to see what's going on with this, because it's giving me a new IP address altogether. Oh, you know what? I didn't add it. Okay, let's try again. Every time you run the test, you have to refresh the page to get a new address, a new email address. Okay, as soon as we send it, just check the score button and wait for the results. Okay, didn't look like it changed much of anything. Let's see what we have. Okay, so we just keep adding to this list of IP addresses. It'll keep building out this list until we actually solve all the problems. Let's go back to the DNS record, edit the record, type in the new recommended value, save it, and let's go back to the test and refresh to get a new IP address, or not an IP address, a email address. Check the score button, and let's see what we get. Oh, 8.2. We're making progress now, so we have to see what's going on. And one of the reasons I'm going through this step by step is because I know what works for this hosting service. I know exactly what works for this hosting service because I use it all the time. But maybe if you're not using Emotion Hosting, you have your own set of values that you need to put in. So that's why I'm going through it step by step, so you can see how to resolve the errors that are generated from this test. So it doesn't give us anything new to add. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple records that aren't being shown here, and they're not being recommended by the tool, by the testing tool. But here's what we can do. Okay, I've made some changes, and I'll share with you the final result if I get a good result here. So we just updated the DNS record. I'm going to go back and grab a new test email. All right, we sent that. Now we can check your score. Perfect. And that came up right away. So here's what informed me what I was missing. When I went back to the email deliverability section, I checked this record here. Sorry, where is it? It's down below. I checked this record here. So there was two things there was only one thing I was really missing, but this is what gave me the clue about what I was missing. I was missing my server IP address. That was all I was missing. And actually, let me go back down here. This is where I got the information down here. So now that we have a perfect score, we can be able to send to places like Gmail, who flag people who don't have SPF records, DMARC records, or DKIM records in their DNS settings.